My girlfriend's strange Dogman encounter in Cape May. This story is from my girlfriend's perspective. She still, to this day, has no idea what she encountered. It happened back in 2018. I arrived in this small rural town near Cape May. The company I was working for at the time was sending me to go door to door, advertising cable and Wi-Fi that they wanted me to sell. I was getting weird vibes all throughout the day, as the town was very small and a bit creepy, with people staring at me or giving me the cold shoulder. For the entire day, it seemed like a lot of the townsfolk that I encountered were on edge, and it was a weird, tense atmosphere. I shrugged it off as people are weird all the time. I continued doing my job, chugging a Red Bull to keep me going, which didn't affect me at all, surprisingly. Besides the weird atmosphere, the scenery was actually quite pretty once you got off the main road. I had to stop at different streets, and some were in the woods on long and seemingly beautiful, endless roads. It was quite scenic. Just before sunset, I was scheduled to visit a few houses on a small peninsula. To get to this peninsula, you had to go down a very long road, past a summer camp area, past a trailer park, past the woods, and then you finally find yourself in a small open area with a bay marsh, a couple of small expensive houses, and shore access. The houses were so close to the water, it seemed like a code violation, but I'm sure they were built to withstand storms, since they did look so expensive. Every house had its own theme, and the area was mostly deserted. Only one house had someone inside at the time, whom I had talked to after knocking on his door. I was so distracted looking at the houses and scenery that I didn't notice how fast sunset was approaching. I came to the realization that I should start heading back to avoid being alone on that long, deserted pathway in the woods. As a smaller female, I'm never comfortable after dark in isolated places, especially without cell service. I was making my way down the path. So far so good, as it wasn't completely dark yet. As I approached the wooded area of the road, I was walking a bit faster, as there were no streetlights and the sunlight was rapidly disappearing. As I walked at a decently fast pace, I noticed something. The woods were eerily quiet. All the life that I was hearing before was gone. Crickets, birds, just pure silence. I stopped in my tracks and I got chills down my spine as I felt the feeling that I was being watched. I looked around the dark woods for any sudden movements. Then, like clockwork, something up ahead made its way out of the tree line. It looked to be some type of large animal. My brain went to overdrive analyzing whatever this animal was. Was it a bear? A dog? No, it looked too large to be a dog, though I was intimidated by its large size. Whatever it was had not noticed me yet. Even though I was scared, I also didn't want to walk back and go into that one man's house. As a woman, I'd rather take my chances with a wild animal than be alone with a man I didn't know in a deserted holiday neighborhood. Suddenly, as I was thinking this, the large animal in the distance had finally noticed my presence. It was observing me, not entirely sure of what to do with me. There wasn't enough light anymore for me to see the animal's face, but I felt unusually frightened. Whatever I was looking at was definitely too big to even be a black bear. I mean, its shoulder height on all fours was about 5 feet or more, which is more comparable to the size of a brown bear. The mass on this creature was extensive. The outline of what I could see looked more like a wolf on steroids. It was extremely muscular. I also noticed the outline of its face was very similar to that of a German shepherd or a wolf. It had those pointed, perked ears and a long snout. In the heat of the moment, I could only hear the sound of my heart palpitating as fear and adrenaline started to crawl its way into my bloodstream. It felt as if time stood still. Then it dawned on me. What I was looking at was not a normal animal. It simply was too big to be any animal that I could recognize from New Jersey's catalog of fauna. And if it wanted to attack me, I would be powerless against it. It was just too big. Though to calm myself down, I threw out the idea that this creature was out of the ordinary. I felt like this could be rationalized somehow. I made my brain go back to the idea of this being maybe a large dog or coyote. I did not believe in cryptids, and I was completely unaware at the time of what size coyotes were supposed to be. so I made a quick decision, realizing that this could very well be a life or death situation. I came to the conclusion that this very large dog-like creature was probably a skittish coyote that I could scare off, at least temporarily, to calm down my nerves. What other choice did I have? The longer I kept standing there, the more aggressive I might come off to this animal, and I didn't want it to get territorial or get the idea that I was easy prey. So I decided I would make the most hideous, loud, confusing, and startling scream/howl I could muster, and just sprint the rest of the way. After I screeched this hideous sound out of my body as hard as I could, the animal quickly changed its body language to defensive. But then, it quickly changed its mind, deciding it wasn't worth a fight. It ran a distance away into the woods. Not too far, though. I started to sprint as fast as I could past that area and beyond. I sprinted until I reached the end of the road and noticed there was a summer camp area with streetlights near me. I rested on top of the table there, out of breath and feeling my heart pounding out of my chest. However, I was still very shaken up. I still felt like I was being watched. I kept my eyes on the tree line. My eyes were darting around, looking for any sign this animal was still there. Once I felt that the coast was clear, I located the next house I was scheduled to visit, and I quickly made my way over there. I met a nice family who ended up buying cable from me, and I told them what had happened to me that night and how I was treated by the locals. The lady of the family, who I presume to be the mother, said, "I don't know why they sent you out here alone. These woods are dangerous after dark, and there are creepy people who live around here." The impression she gave me was that there were animal encounters she could not explain, and that there were lots of ex-convicts in the area, as well as people who should have been arrested and haven't been. She was as equally concerned about the people as she was the animals around the place. This gave me goosebumps. How many times today could my life have been taken? They were extremely concerned for my safety, and told me to contact my team leader so I could get picked up. They said they didn't want me to go outside again, and that I should call it quits for the night, and to not visit any other houses. To this day, I still have no idea what creature I encountered. There are strange things in the woods, things people don't speak about, things they might even be covering up. To me, it felt as if the townsfolk of that town knew something about what I encountered. So weird creature I encountered in those woods. Let's never meet again. The Dogman of Alice Ranch. This happened when I was about 11 years old. My dad took me and my younger brother to hunt and camp in Texas. He picked us up from my mom's house around 10 p.m. It took us about 2.5 hours to get to the ranch. Our grandpa and my older brother were already waiting for us by our grandpa's tent. The next couple of days went over well. One day, our dad woke us up at around 5 in the morning to get us ready for some deer hunting. He walked us to one of the blinds and left me and my little brother at one, while he took my older brother with him to another spot a good mile or so from ours. Our grandpa had his blind away from me and my younger brother's blind to make sure we didn't do anything stupid, as kids sometimes do. A few hours went by. My little brother eventually just fell asleep. I was up, looking at the feeders. Around 8 a.m., I saw a 10-point buck emerge from the brush. I nudged my brother awake. Slowly he woke up. I saw his face light up with joy. He reached immediately for my rifle, but I carefully pushed his hand away. He whispered, "What are you doing? We have a straight shot." I pointed back to the feeder. There were 2 does near the buck. My little brother slumped down in his chair, tears in his eyes. Looking at him, I sighed and reached for my rifle, even though my father had told me not to waste a shot unless I had a clear one. Despite the does being in the way, it sort of broke my heart seeing my little brother sad like that. So I ignored the rule, steadied my rifle, and made sure I was sighted in. A couple of minutes passed by, but it felt like forever before I was finally able to take a shot. It landed right on the buck's shoulder. My little brother had been watching the whole thing. He was so excited. We were ready then to step out of the blind, but when we did, I heard a rustling in front of us. Even though I'd already landed a buck, I got excited at the thought of landing another. Being the overconfident kid I was, I took my aim and held my breath. Then I peered into the scope to take a look. That was the worst thing I could ever do. At the same time, my brother grabbed a flashlight and shone it out into the dark. The beam landed right on that thing. This beast had the head of a German Shepherd, but it had the body of a bodybuilder. Right away, when the beam hit it, it snapped its head in our direction. I thought it was just a weird and big dog. Then it ran straight at our blind. I heard a loud thud against the walls. Fear had set in for both my little brother and me. Then what I feared most had come true. I looked up at the blind's window. There it was, that thing. It had black fur covering its upper body. Its lips curled back, bearing yellowish canine teeth, some of which were covered in a deep red substance. The loud footsteps circled us, faster and faster. Then, out of nowhere, they stopped. I wondered how long that would last. The door handle shook violently. That creature was trying to open the blind. I aimed my rifle at the door, using one hand to place my brother behind me. As the door pried open, I saw that it was just my grandpa. He'd heard my little brother screaming. With rifle in hand, he had left his blind to see what was going on. He took us and ran with us to our father's blind. He told my dad that my little brother had screamed. After asking what happened, my little brother just muttered, "Wolf." We went back to camp. That night was worse to come. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of a loud and menacing howl. I stood from my sleeping bag and peered outside. I saw the outline of a humanoid thing at the tree line. I ducked back into my sleeping bag crying, telling myself it wasn't real. It was just a dream, how wrong I was. I heard loud and quick footsteps running straight towards the tent. I gathered the courage to look up, to take a peek at the thin tent window. That thing's hands, yes, human-like hands ending in long black claws and red, piercing eyes, sat right at the window. It was there, just peering down at me. Eventually, it walked back into the woods. The following day, I went to the blind again with my dad and older brother. This time, my little brother went with my grandpa. We never got the buck I shot, so we were going back for it now. Well, when we found it, it had already been decimated. Its stomach had been ripped open, legs torn up and twisted, antlers almost completely chewed through. After that day, I never went camping or hunting there again. Werewolf attack. I'm not even sure where to start with this. It pains me to even think about it because it only happened a week ago, but I'll do my best. You can call me Jay. I'm a 21-year-old guy, and last week I decided to take the trip from LA to my boyfriend's house in Wyoming. We were finally moving in together, so we needed to get the final things from his parents' house back to our new one in LA. It was around a 15-hour trip there and a 15-hour trip back, so I stopped along the way in Utah for a day. After all, my friend lives there. I had no issues for most of the journey, until I stupidly decided I'd drive the last 8 hours straight during the night. I was about an hour outside of Salt Lake City. It was around 1 a.m. I was driving through a forested road when it happened. There was a decapitated deer in the road, which made me bring my car to a stop. It was right slap bang in the middle, blocking me from getting by, as the road was narrow. My entire surroundings were pitch black, with my headlights being the only source of light, except for the moon. The moon might have been full at the time. I really can't remember well, as it didn't even cross my mind to check at the moment. I had to do something. So I tried calling my boyfriend first, but the signal kept getting dropped. We weren't able to talk for long, but he told me to just drive over it, as getting out wasn't worth the risk of the predator still being around. I still wish I'd just listened to him. Instead, I got out of my car and headed toward the deer. While I was making my way over, the crickets around me slowly went silent. Soon, the only sound I could hear was my car engine, which really made me feel unsettled. I just wanted to get out of there. So I took hold of the deer's legs and started to drag it out of the way, into the shrubbery on the side. I was not about to touch the head. It was what happened next that shook me to my core. When I'd finished dealing with the deer's body, I wiped my hands clean on my shirt and looked up at my car. Sure enough, there it was, right next to my open car door. It was 7 to 8 feet tall, covered in dark hair, standing on 2 feet. Its eyes were like yours or mine, but bloodshot. And I mean extremely bloodshot. Its pupils were a kind of yellowish orange, and one of its hands was clenching my car door. I can still see those thick, long claws scraping into the glass window. It was looking right into my soul, panting and frowning like it was full of rage at me. So much so that its mouth was opening slowly, revealing long canine teeth. I froze there like a deer in the headlights. Pretty ironic, considering the headlights were on me now. I didn't know what to do, but I slowly took a step back. As I did that, it took a step toward me. Its legs were jointed like a dog's. This creature didn't even look like a standard werewolf that you'd see in a movie. More like a wolfman or a dogman. It didn't have any clothes, but it did have a few pieces of shirt over its torso. It was unlike anything I could have ever imagined. At this point I was panicking. I genuinely thought I was going to die that night, alone and afraid. When I took one last step back, it charged at me with the most deafening roar I've ever heard. So much adrenaline was running through me that I swerved when it was about 1 foot away from me. It then tried to swipe at me with its claws. It missed, giving me the opportunity to run back to my car. I ran back in, stepping on that pedal faster and harder than I ever had. I had to pass it, as it was now back where I'd found the deer. But this thing, I didn't care about hitting it. I wanted to get away. The beast lunged at my car as I passed by, which caused the whole car to shake. But now I was already ramping up speed. After 20 minutes of going way faster down that road than I should have been, I was clear and back on the freeway. At that point I felt safe, and I called my boyfriend. I was frantic and could barely speak a word. He was just as upset as I was after hearing about it. I called the police after that. They said they'd send a few rangers down that road to investigate. They even said that they'd had a few reports from other people passing through that very same road, the very same night. I didn't hear anything back after that. I've always been a fan of horror, but I never even considered anything like that to be real. I don't even know if I still believe it was real. I sit up at night trying to come up with any other reasonable explanation for it. I've written this just to be heard by someone aside from my boyfriend. No one else knows or believes what I saw was real. I wish they were right. I hope they were right. The only thing I know is that if I hadn't swerved out of the way, I probably wouldn't be here to write this today. Dogman encounter. This story isn't my own experience, but it's from a woman in Michigan, just up north from the Montcalm County area. It happened in a cabin in the woods. I never knew the lady. In fact, I heard the story from my dad, and my dad had read it from a newspaper. This woman lived in a cabin in the woods. One dark night, she started to hear sniffing coming from the window and front door. She was confused as to what it could have been. She opened the window and looked around outside. What she found horrified her. A dog-like face was staring right back at her through the window she had just opened. She freaked out, ran away, and grabbed a gun. She began to hear this thing clawing and scratching at her door. It was loud and furious. She fired a gunshot through her roof to scare it away, and luckily for her it seemed to work. The thing was no longer there, and the scratching noises stopped. She called the cops soon after. When they arrived, there was no dogman outside, but there was a hole in her roof. And what's more concerning and scary was the fact that they also found huge and unnatural scratch marks going all the way down her front door on the outside. Not only that, but there were dozens of other claw marks. The officers had never seen anything like it. The woman explained everything that had happened, the sounds of the claws, the dog face in the window, the sniffing around the door. They were shocked. The cops agreed that no human could ever do anything like that to a door. Soon enough, it was reported in the local newspapers around Michigan. Who knows? Maybe there is a dogman out there, hiding in the woods. The Friendly Dogman. The following is a story told to me by my cousin, an honest guy who has never lied to me at least as far as I know, and who used to deny the existence of such creatures. This story will be told from his perspective. Before we begin, though, I need to mention a few things. My cousin's a pretty big guy, standing around 2 meters tall. His height, coupled with his expertise in karate, had earned him his second blue belt not long before this happened. He's much more of a fight than a flight kind of guy. He also doesn't live in the US. He lives in Europe, specifically Germany. So consider this a translation of the story he told me. If he mentioned something in meters to me, I converted that to feet in the story. And lastly, there actually aren't any tales about dogmen in our country, only werewolves. But from what he told me, there was no full moon present, so it couldn't have been a werewolf. Now, without further ado, here's the story. Me and 2 of my friends decided to go camping at the forest area near our town, after spending so much time indoors due to, you know what. We met at my house, as it was the closest to the road leading to the forest. Once there, we loaded our camping equipment into the car of one of my friends. We would be camping that night, and the sun was already setting. However, it was later than planned because one of my friends had to work an extra hour. There wasn't much sunlight left when we arrived. We got to work quickly setting everything up. While my friends unloaded the car and set up the tents, I was out collecting firewood. I was at it for about half an hour. I'd gone deeper into the woods when suddenly I heard some heavy footsteps, along with a wolf-like growl behind me. This was definitely odd, since wolves haven't been native to this forest for centuries, having been wiped out by farmers to protect their livestock. I put down the wood I gathered, and I began to turn around slowly. What I saw next I'll never forget. Standing several feet away from me on its hind legs was a large creature covered in dark gray fur. It had a wolf-like face and piercing yellow eyes. It was nearly 8 feet tall. I had to look up at it. But what somehow shocked me even more than the creature itself was what it was carrying in its long arms. It was a young girl. I couldn't tell whether she was still breathing or not, but I also couldn't make out any blood or wounds. While I stared at the girl, the creature took another step toward me. Then it bent down until its snout was about an inch away from my face. I could feel the air coming out of its nose as it sniffed me, deeply inhaling my scent. After what felt like forever, it suddenly backed off again. After it took a few steps back, it crouched down, placing the girl on the ground in front of me. Then it got down on all 4 legs and gave me a last growl, as if to say that I should leave these woods. Then it ran back the way it came. At such high speed, I was glad it wasn't chasing me. I looked at it running away for a moment, before I heard the girl asking quietly whether the creature was gone. I replied with a yes, and asked her whether she was all right, while helping her up. She replied yes as well. I noticed she had a few bruises on her face. I asked her where those came from. She told me that those were not from the creature, but from her abusive stepfather. Apparently she had run away from home the day before to go to her uncle, who lives in our town. She stayed off the road to avoid her parents finding her by car, which is why she went through the woods. Not long before my own encounter, she'd heard a growl coming from behind her. She saw this creature moving toward her on all 4s. She told me she'd heard that one should play dead when being approached by a predator, and so she did just that. But before long, she felt herself being picked up and carried away by this creature. Since she didn't want to risk doing anything to upset the creature, she simply didn't move. I offered to drive her to her uncle's. She accepted, and I brought her to my friends. I told them she was on her way to her uncle's, and that I found her in the woods. But knowing they wouldn't believe the rest of the story, I didn't say anything about the creature. We drove her to her uncle's as promised, who took her in and thanked us for bringing her to him. After all was said and done, we decided to go camping another time. I'm not sure why the creature didn't attack the girl or me, and instead simply brought her to me. Obviously, I'm glad it happened that way. Still, I don't know if I ever want to meet it again. Who knows whether it's still so benevolent when it's hungry. Wolfman, the suburbs. I live in the suburbs of Salt Lake City. My house is about 20 miles from the nearest forest or mountain. This happened one night. I woke up around 4 a.m. because my mouth was so dry. My room is on the second floor of my house, so I had to go downstairs to get a drink. When I got back upstairs, I got back in bed and began to fall back to sleep. A couple of minutes went by, when suddenly the hair on my arm stood up. The first thing I did was look around the room to make sure that whatever was making my hair stand up like that wasn't in the room with me. I've had some weird things happen in my room as well as the area outside my room. After making sure the coast was clear, I stood up and walked over to the blinds. It was then that I knew whatever was making me feel this way had to be outside. When I looked out, I saw a deer go running down the street outside my house. A couple of seconds after the deer ran by, I saw something else go running down the street after the deer. This creature was definitely what had set my brain off. The creature was covered in thick, dark fur. It had large, human-like hands with long claws instead of fingers. Its legs looked human, but sort of backwards. It also had a wolf-like head. It was tall, about 2/3 the height of the light post outside my window. It was also extremely fast. It covered the 150 feet of my street in what seemed to be a few seconds. After seeing that, I could not fall asleep, and for a while I was a bit too scared to even look outside. I don't really believe in the paranormal, but I do like listening to such stories. I always look for a good explanation for everything, but I'm starting to believe there are things that we haven't officially discovered yet. Later on after that night, my sister saw the same creature walking down the street. This confirms that I actually did see it, that it wasn't just a dream. She gave the same description, except she actually saw its eyes. She described them as orangey red.